Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Gagnon Atelier. I'm your old pal, Tim Gagnon, and this is the Modern Masters Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. We have been going through all kinds of growth and changes, and I am really excited about what is coming up for you guys to see and all the work that I've been doing behind the scenes. We talked about that last Friday on Facebook. And so I hope you guys got a chance to see that. If not, you can just go back on Facebook and find it. Real easy to find. As always, guys, I would appreciate it if you would like this post. And if you could also like the Gagnon Atelier Facebook page, that would be great. Also, remember, we've got a YouTube channel. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you haven't checked us out on YouTube, please go to the Gagnon Atelier YouTube channel and subscribe because we have got a ton of content on there. We have got topical videos like how to give and receive an art critique, how to do different we've got like product comparisons and reviews and things like that. We also have every single Modern Masters podcast with every artist, over 20 interviews with the top artists out today. And just like that, we've got another one today that I am really excited to talk to you about. It is absolutely fantastic to have her with me. So I'm going to bring her on right now. Let's see. Let me click this button. And boom, there she is. Let me introduce everybody to my friend, Barbara Hack. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited.
Oh, me too. Thanks, Tim.
All right. Well, you and I have known each other. We met, gosh, how many years ago now?
Only 3.
Has it only been 3? It seems longer.
3, yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, and that was, we met in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Portrait Society of America's conference.
Yes,
and that was my first time there, and apparently it was your first time also.
It was.
So, and we met, I want to say we had our first real conversation in the, I was walking, it was like the little store area that they had.
Yes, it was in the retail area. I think we were both there to watch Shayna's demo.
Yes.
She was about to come up, and David had just had one, and we were there, and I don't know, we just started chatting and comparing notes, and I think we both had that newcomers. I'm here. I'm excited.
We did.
I don't know what to do.
We did. And we were both at that stage in our life, even though we've both worked as artists. Like I worked as an artist my whole life, but always for other people in the commercial art realm. And so we were both at that stage where we had made it. This is our time to make that transition to full-time artists. And so this was one of our first big steps in doing that, was going to a conference. And so in that time, we're full-time artists. I'm over here at the art studio in here, and you're in your art studio. And
yes, my little cubby is the best way to describe it.
Oh, you know, it's so funny. It's like, now that I've got a 400 square foot studio, and I love it, but it feels gigantic. I used to be mostly the spare bedroom was my studio. But when I got remarried, I went from having 2 daughters to having 4 daughters and a son. And so all the bedrooms were taken. And so my art studio went from the spare bedroom to the nook behind the staircase in the condo. And it was like, I was painting like this. And that's when I was painting gigantic, like the smallest painting was 3 foot by 3 foot.
Oh my gosh.
In that little tiny space. Yeah.
I bet they're glad to have you out of there.
Yeah. Now my wife just wishes I would come out of here. She's like, you got to come and like hang out with us, because I'm in here all the time. So artist life.
Yeah. I'm in my cubby all the time. I think 3 years ago, actually, you mentioned that 3 years ago, I came back from that conference. I felt like the universe had been talking to me for a while. I mean, I was having these different things that were happening, and I knew I wanted to make a change. And I went to that Portrait Society as my first one because I've always followed it. But David was up for the main award.
Right. And you're talking about David Casson.
Yes. And he was up for the main award, which, by the way, he won. And I'm not saying it was because I was there, but I went to support him. And it was so much fun. Just everybody was so welcoming. And like I said, I went there with this, doe-eyed. I wanted to talk to artists. I can't even begin to tell you. If I started naming all the artists that I ran into and you ran into, and how kind they were and opening and willing to just share information. Just
That's
it wasn't
a
like
big
the
one.
secret society.
That's probably one of the biggest differences that I noticed at an art conference as opposed to dealing with artists one-on-one. I have run into so many artists that they don't have that, what I call a maestro's heart. And, a maestro just means master. It's those master artists, but they hold on to their secrets like they're secrets.
Yes.
And they don't want to share. And they're like this, and they think you're going to steal their idea or their thing and run with it. And they keep everything close to the cuff, and they don't share. They don't want to sow into the next generation of artists or anything like that. But when you go to these conferences and you see the, no joke, top artists in the industry, and they are like, what do you want to know? Like, let me give you all my secrets.
I learned
very different.
Years ago, I was a fashion illustrator for like 15 years. And there was Stravinos was the fashion illustrator for Bergdorf Goodman in New York. And at that time, and no, you couldn't go on the internet. I loved his work, and I just wanted to learn something about his technique. And I remember having to research and find out how to get in touch with them. And when I got in touch with him, I was so, I was really young, and I was like, oh, I just love your work. This is what I do, and I'm really interested. Would you mind sharing? I mean, I was so, and he said, oh, absolutely not. This is what I do. This is the paper I use. This is this. And I said, my gosh, I'm so impressed. Thank you. And he said, what? You can use everything. And he wasn't trying to be snobby. He just said, I can tell you and give you everything I do. You're not me. And he didn't mean it snobby.
Exactly.
We all take the same materials, the same work, the same whatever, and we will use them and make something different from it. So and again, at that conference, people sharing, this is how I got to do this. This is how I got to do that. And I was trying to find out, I was getting ready to face a big birthday that I wasn't handling well. And I just felt like this was a time for change for me. And I was, again, universe was sending me signals. And when I got there, everybody, that was all part of it. And I was questioning people. And one of the women that I happened to question was Judith Carducci. And she had spoke that day. And it just really hit me because she hadn't started painting, I think, until she was 60, if I'm correct about that. But we were going into this, grandmaster ballroom and for everything. And I didn't want to interrupt her. I didn't want to be rude, but I just wanted to tell her that she had touched me. And so I ran up and I just said, I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to tell you that what you said today was really hit me. I'm getting ready to make a change or feel like I want to paint for the first time, full-time, be a full-time artist. And she just, and you've heard it a million times, but I wasn't ready to hear it till that moment. And she just said, if not now, when? And I just remember thinking, okay. And I literally came home from the conference and quit my job.
Wow.
And
now, how did that go?
It's a little scary, but it's those things, what would you do? What would you do if you didn't think you would fail? And there were lots of things that people talked to me. My daughters were so extremely supportive. My one daughter sent me this thing, and I know it really made it. It said, people don't become artists in time. Artists become themselves. And she said, Mom, you're becoming yourself. And it was so touching to me that they were just, now's your time, Mom, go do, Eleanor Roosevelt said, do something every day that scares you. Well, that was it. And I just thought, I'm afraid of not making a regular money like you do in a regular job.
Right.
But you know what? It was, if not now, when?
Right. When you become when you get into being a full-time artist, you have to also be an entrepreneur.
Correct.
And that's part of it. There's the business side of art that nobody likes to talk about.
Right.
That if you get that wrong, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't have that side laid out, you're in trouble. And at the end of the day, you need to have a plan. And a lot of people, like you, just took the leap, which is amazing and daring. And like, you know, that's like, I'm going to go to the moon, you know, hop on a rocket, you know.
I'm not saying it was the smartest thing I've ever done.
Right. You know, and, but
best
I've been there too. You know, I've been there 2 years ago. I owned an advertising agency, and I was working in a job that was, it's kind of weird. It was like the most coolest. I don't even know if that's good English, but it's not. My dad would be upset with me right now. But it was one of the neatest, most just neat jobs. I loved everything about it except for the boss. The boss was, no exaggeration, a madman. He was the most, like I mean, I remember another employee came up to me, and he was like, he was a new employee, and he said, and he came up to me and he was crying, grown man crying, and he said, I didn't think you were lying. I thought you were exaggerating out of anger. And then he burst into tears and he said, no one would believe us unless they worked here, you know, and that kind of thing. So it was like, he was just, so I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. And I just quit and started my own ads. And it was a friend that had said, he looked around, he visited the place, and he looked around and he goes, why don't you start your own ad agency? And I'm like, what, are you crazy? And he goes, you know, and he's looking at this giant 800 square foot room that I was in with all of the marketing materials I had created in just a year. And he goes, you did all this yourself? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, you're already an ad agency.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, sometimes we need somebody to say the right phrase that clicks in our brain and makes us go, okay. So I quit and started my own ad agency and started making all those things for people that were nice to me instead, you know.
You know, and you work really. I've always had. I work really hard, and for whatever, and I've always worked really hard for the people I work for. There's without a doubt. I will. There were times where people have said, "Why don't you just put a cot in here? You're always here." You know, I eat, sleep, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of that work ethic. And so what it just do is I'm just now working hard for myself.
Right. I find I work harder now than I did. I work more hours now than I ever did working for anybody else, because you have to, you know.
You do, but you know, the thing is, and it's not always easy, and it's difficult. When you said about being an entrepreneur, I'm not saying I've been the best at that part of it, but I'm still learning. It's only, and I say only been 3 years. I still kind of go, it's only been 3 years. It's been so exciting. I was teaching before. I was doing lots of different things, and we talked about that yesterday. I've had lots of different jobs, all art related, but never just painted for me. So I'm still finding my voice. I'm still doing that. And I still had students, adult students, that wanted to stay with me. And a woman, a friend that also worked with me, had quit at the same time and opened an academy. And so she allowed me to bring my adults with me to Hull Art Academy. And so I still teach 1 day a week so I can stay in touch with that, because I do love it. Because one of the things about teaching is that I think you continue to learn more when you're teaching.
Yes.
It reminds you all the time of what you actually do know. I went up to my old college professor, which again, yesterday we talked about, he's an amazing man. I'm so grateful every day that I had this professor in college. He pushed, he was very, he insisted on being classically trained. He insisted that you leave college with a marketable skill. That was his point, a marketable skill. And so he pushed really hard. And when I went back many years later, as I started teaching, I was really questioning lots of things. So I went up and spent a couple days with him, and can you give me kind of, you know, here's what's going on. I'm teaching painting, haven't really taught that in a while. And this was maybe 10 years ago. And after 3 days, he said, okay, are you feeling more comfortable? How do you feel about this? And I said, the best part is that in 3 days, you did not tell me anything I didn't already know. Nice. That was so comforting, because I didn't want to spend 3 days going, oh my God, I didn't realize, I didn't know.
Right.
But that's even all the things in the 3 years. I coordinate the workshops for Hull Art Academy as well, so that I selfishly can bring people in that I want to learn from. And I will say, in that respect, I constantly continue to learn new things. I constantly continue to share that with my students, and I constantly continue to get affirmation that, oh yeah, I say that. Okay, yep, I got that. That's good. And new ideas, and biggest thing is new materials.
Yeah, there is an
things are
explosion
changing
of new
constantly.
materials out there right now.
Yeah.
So many new companies are popping up with new ways to, new tools and you name it.
Yeah.
Substrates. I think for me, the thing that I'm noticing the most are different substrates that are coming out to paint on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's just absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's really, you know, when you take that leap into becoming a full-time artist, you know, there's so many artists that they're like, you know, they're hobbyist artists, and then there are full-time artists. And then there are people that, you know, it's like, there's nothing, it's okay to be a hobbyist artist. If nothing wrong with that, enjoy it, you know, have your day job, have that security, maybe one day retire, and then all you have to do is paint. Nothing wrong with that at all. And there are a lot of artists that I found, they sit there and they beat themselves up because they're not a full-time artist, so they have to have a day job. And it's like, there's no shame in having a day job. There's no shame in having to being able to pay your bills, you know? And it's like the concept of the starving artist, it is a myth, but it's also a stereotype that's true. And my experience has been, it's that problem with the mental hurdle of it's okay to have a day job. And then you're still an artist. A lot of artists out there, they refuse to work a day job because they're not in their mind, and it's only in their mind.
Only in their
They're
mind.
not a real artist. Let me use my little finger thingies here.
Yeah.
They're not a real artist unless they're a full-time artist. So they refuse to get a day job. And when they do get a day job out of absolute, it's that or starve, they're miserable at work. They're miserable to be around. They hate their job, and everybody knows it. And they usually don't get to keep their job because nobody wants to be around them, including their employer. And so it's like, but then they struggle financially, and they're always like, oh, woe is me, woe is me. It's like, and it's a mental thing. So having a day job, you can still be a great artist. You can still be in exhibits. You can still, you know, be in shows. You can still grow. And it's like, but if you want to make the transition of full-time artist, now you taking the leap was daring. For me, I had a plan. I'm a planner. And so for me, my wife and I sat down and we had a long 3-year plan. And so it was like, okay, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And I'm in year 1 of a 5-year plan now, because once I made the leap to full-time artist, I'm like, okay, now I need a 5-year plan to get me from here to here where I want to go. Yeah. And once I get there, when I reach that goal, I'm going to make another 5-year plan. And I think it's important to have those goals and plans, because it's like, not loose, but for me, I think for the typical artist that's trying to make that transition from hobbyist to full-time artist, having a plan helps, just because it keeps you motivated in where you're going to go, having like a vision board and having like short-term goals, long-term goals, and all that. But for me, it's like, I've noticed, especially during what's been going on, and I'm going to date our program here for a second, as much as I hate doing this, but when the pandemic hit and the economy pretty much came to a screeching halt, a lot of artists that were only in galleries, they're in trouble right now. Right. And they are in full-blown panic mode, some of them, because their income has just come to a screeching halt. Those that traveled and did workshops, those are gone. Right. And so, but my artist friends that are diversified, they teach, they have an Etsy store, they do a lot of online sales. They're selling more than they ever have. Right. Because they've got other avenues. And my friend Matt Tommy from Thriving Christian Artists website, he talks about that all the time, is diversifying, so you have multiple streams of income, because any one of them could go the way of MySpace. Remember MySpace? Yeah. Did you have a MySpace page?
I mean, I remember it, but it's one of those things like, no, I really didn't get into that.
Right. You know, it's like nobody, like MySpace died like that. You know, Facebook totally just murdered it. And now nobody, I don't even know if MySpace still exists, but it's one of those things where it's
really
like,
sure. Yeah. But
and to me, when I look at that, I'm like, Facebook could go away tomorrow too. Something could come along and make Facebook or Instagram or Etsy or all these things go away tomorrow. So then what are you going to do? And so a business mentor of mine, and it's funny, it's when I had my ad agency, he said to me, no one customer, and for us as an artist, no one source of income should be more than 20% of your income. Because the minute they are over 20%, they own you because you need them.
Point. Yeah.
And so it's like for an artist, I think having a plan and going, okay, am I just in galleries? That's probably a bad idea. Do I have an online way to bring income? Do I have this? Do I have teaching? That kind of a thing. And so that's one of the things that that's my 5-year plan is to get, I've got some clients right now that are at 80%. And I've got another one that's 15%. So I'm trying to do this with them.
Sure.
And then add a few others.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think though, just part of, maybe it's just my personality, but part of artist personality, and you know, we all know some very wonderful, very successful artists as artists, but they also do other things as well. They do teach workshops. They, sometimes they develop lines of brushes or other things, because I think that's just part of our personality. We like different ways to create things.
Yes.
So I do teach a bit. I do have commissions that I have to do, and I enjoy it goes back to, I know there are artists that don't want to do commissions. I have no problem with that. I do have to pay bills, but also I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I love when a commission is happy with what I've done. That makes me happy. So I like working with people, but I've also had all those kinds of jobs where that's what I've done. So.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of artists that like I'm one that I tend to shy away from commissions, especially portrait commissions, mainly because I've had too many high maintenance customers.
Right.
That are impossible to please. It wouldn't matter what you did. It wouldn't matter if you took a photo of them and handed it to them and said, I painted this, they would still complain. And so it's like, for me, I can avoid that with the way I do my artwork. Some people thrive doing portraits with clients. And it's like, and I've always wondered, how do you navigate those high maintenance customers? Because to me, I'm like, I don't want to even deal with you.
I can tell you, I've done this. I have done, over all the jobs I've done too, over the years, I have done on and off portraits. And I can honestly say, I've never had that. I can say one or two little stories. One, I had a woman that's probably the only bad, and I'm not going to say bad, it was more funny to me. She had little things that she wanted in her sons, and it was a life-size portrait. And at first she wanted him in front of part of this jungle gym they had built for him in the backyard. And then suddenly halfway through the portrait, she wanted it to become a tree instead of that. And then I had to put the Nike logo on his socks he had on, and just little funny things that it was more made me laugh than anything. And that's how I take it. But in terms of high maintenance, I really haven't had too many. And I know I'm lucky in that. I've heard some horror stories, but you know, I like it.
Sometimes I think it's the personality of the artist too. You know, some people can handle, some people can work with, patrons in a more effective way than others. It's a communication tool, and things like that. So it can be pretty wild. So let's see. Oh, we got some people coming in. We're gonna brag on you a little bit here. Oh, we got Mary Hull saying Barbara Schaefer Hack is an amazing artist. She also says, and a great person. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Mary. Glad you're watching.
Mary, the check's in the mail.
It's always good when the boss tells you that.
For all those other people I paid to say things like that. Come on. Yes, Mary used to work for me where we worked before. She's a wonderful teacher and artist. And then I quit to go do this, and she quit. And of course, we've become friends, so we stayed in contact. And she opened Hull Art Academy and asked me if I wanted to bring those my students over there. And then I've grown my students over there, and I have some amazing students right now. We have so much fun. I do love to laugh, and but I'm, I've been told I'm a pretty strict teacher too, so that's okay. But yeah,
That's good. That's
I
good.
love
Nothing wrong with being a strict teacher. It's like when people come to you to learn art, sometimes they bring, I've run into this too. And we talked about it yesterday, where you have students that they come in and they're paying for you to teach them how to do art, but then they tell you, this is how I'm going to do it.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, no, that's not how we do it here.
Yeah.
But this is how I want to do it. It's like,
you have one or two choices in that regard. Sometimes you can just take their check and say, that's fine, and you can paint like that, and I'm just going to cash your check.
right.
Or you can just kind of say, but it's, it's being open. We talked about yesterday, being open to new ideas, being open to things. A lot of people, I'm not trainers as well as just people. In 3 years, that is probably next to being able to paint and having so much fun painting that. The people that I have met and have become friends with is probably the biggest thing, you included. But we've had workshops, and I've stayed connected with so many people and been surprised and just joyful as the kind of people, and sharing. They're all willing to, here's all I do, here's all the stuff nobody's ever been. And in the past, I've had students come to me and said that they've taken with, some artist, and they've said, well, they said I could only use this medium because it's their special medium and I have to buy it from them. And I just start laughing. And I would name a very wonderful, very successful artist and said, he tells you everything, or she tells you every single thing they do on their list, what they have, right down to the camera and the light they use. If an artist says to you, this is my secret recipe, you can only buy it from me, it's a scam. And it truly is a scam.
Oh yeah. That's yeah. It's a shame. It's like you have artists that are just, trying to, it becomes a marketing thing. Everything, they've got it set up where they want to do it that way. Everybody has a different way of doing it. And I get that kind of, you're trying to make money, so you try to sell your stuff. Right. But at the same time, it's like to say you can only use this product. That's a little wonky. But, hey, at the same time, we've talked about artists that hold their stuff tight to the cuff and they don't want to share their knowledge. It happens. So it's like you have both ends of the spectrum. And at the end of the day, people are just weird.
Yeah. And I don't know about you and your journey in 3 years. We talked about a little bit about it yesterday. One of the things that I've been fascinated with in 3 years is that, and the adage about the more you know, the less you know, it is so very true. I started out with thinking, and I was getting all this knowledge, and my bar keeps raising. My bar keeps raising from what I want in my work. And I try to keep growing and getting better and doing all these things. And then as I do that, the bar keeps getting farther away.
It does.
I keep following on Instagram and Facebook too. I keep following all these artists, and you find more artists, and you find it becomes, sometimes it feels like this thing I'm chasing and I'm never going to get to. But
well, it's like, what do they say? Doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doctors practice medicine. Mm-hmm. Artists chase. Yes. Artists chase, because it's like the problem with being an artist is that every artist that is ever artist in the history of artists, what you have up in here is always greater than what your skills here can accomplish. And so you're never, ever going to get a painting that completely, truly captures what you envision. Right. It's never going to happen. So it's frustrating, because but that's the point. You're always chasing after that. Right.
Well, when people ask you, how do you know when a painting is finished? That is difficult. I do have somewhat of a gut feeling. I have a gut feeling about a lot of things. So that gut feeling tells me it's done. Mm-hmm. But in all honesty, we know is like just what you said. It's done for what it is right now. This painting is done because I already have another one and something else I'm going to chase.
Right.
So it keeps kind of, going forward, and that was it. You have to follow that gut feeling.
Yeah. One of the things my students will that are probably watching right now will laugh. I always say, step away from the canvas, and they're like,
yeah, if my students are watching, they never hear me say that.
Yeah. Step away from the canvas. I remember having one, she was painting, and she was a brand new painter, and she's painting, and she's working that brush and she's trying to achieve a certain color and she's working it, but she's just making mud. She's just making mud.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and the more she's trying to fix it, the worse it's getting. And I'm telling her, I'm like, step away from the canvas, step away from the canvas. She's like, I can't stop. And I had to grab her hand. She's like, just pull away, just pull away.
Breathe.
She's like, what do I do? And I looked at it and I told her what to do. And then she did it. And I'm like, so she fixed that part, but then she just went right back to her old habit. And I'm like, stop it.
Oh, I hope she's watching. She'll be really happy you shared.
Oh yeah, it happens. Well, I'd like to say that was just one student, but it's funny. It's like they're working so hard to fix the color, and they're only making it worse. And it's like muscle memory; they can't stop. It's like they get it like a tick, and they're just.
Well, I hate to admit, I probably have done that too. So
I think everybody's done that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, let's show off some of your work. I want people to see what you have because we have got. Oh my goodness. Let's see here. We are going to show some of your artwork because I want to talk about some of these. These are like, I'm going to show what I think is one of your signature pieces. This was one of the first ones I saw of yours that made me go, oh, wow. I like this one.
Thank you.
So here we go. I'm going to hide behind it. So there you go. Tell us about this beautiful painting.
Thank you. Well, that's a painting of my, painting my daughter, Whitney. We had done a family, her and her husband were doing, he was working in London for a few months and we decided to all go over. And at that time, and I had shared with you, but a lot of my friends know this, that one of my process, and it's changing, is that when I see something or someone, I'm a figurative painter, so it's usually someone, there's a voice in my head that says, you need to paint this. And that's one of the voices I actually listen to. So I turned around because we were in London late, and she was looking in her phone, she was going to direct us on the next train to take, and she was looking at the schedule. But I had turned around and I just saw this glow in her so intensely looking at this, and the voice said, need to paint it. I took a snapshot of it. And when I come back to paint it, and that's what my process is, when I come back and I'm going through photos, again, this little note says, oh, you need to paint this, but it doesn't become necessarily clear to me why or what the painting is about until I'm painting it. And this one is called Guidance. And the reason is that in 3 years, you get more in touch with social media, other artists, all these things happening. And our phones, we're all connected to our phones. We're all connected to our iPads, everything. And we look to them for guidance, but not just for Google Maps like she's doing right now, or schedules or weather, whatever. But in social media, we start looking at this for guidance in which direction we're supposed to go, what our likes and dislikes are. Myself included, oh my gosh, how come this painting only got a few likes? What's different with that than this? Why is this not going here? Where's the problem? How did I lose this many followers? Or a lot of younger people look to this, honestly, unfortunately, for their self-esteem.
Right, for validation. Yeah.
We've become a whole nation of selfies, and the actual taking of the selfie picture, to me, that's just one element of it. We're becoming so self-absorbed in what we are supposed to be and look like. So this was about guidance, and it's about, and that's why I liked it, that it's so dark, and the only thing that is glowing is this visual image of where she's getting her information, where she's getting all that. I was very fortunate. This is only a 12 by 12 inch painting, and it got in one of my first major shows. It was in the Wausau Museum of Contemporary Art through Poets and Artists, and David Hummer's the director there. And Poets and Artists was one of those that I got in touch with at the very beginning, so put a lot of opportunities on the table for me, and that actually sold while I was up there, which made me very happy. Like my daughter said, a little weird that I'm in someone else's home that I don't know, but hopefully someday. But Jenny's great, and she's become a very good friend. She's a wonderful artist as well. So yeah, thank you. That's got a fun memory for me for sure.
Oh yeah, I really like the lighting. The lighting. It's kind of funny for me when I get those moments where it's like, must paint this person. It sounds creepy as all get out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
it is.
I know if you tell people have voices.
It is. But as an artist, you understand that it's like the light will hit a person just a certain way and it will create shadows that are dramatic or something like that. And it's like, whoa, and it's like you have to paint the person at that point. For me, I've painted a lot of pastors, and it's because they're on a stage, the light's hitting them just right, they're talking, it's like, oh well, wow, look at that, it looks fantastic, I gotta paint that.
Magic, right?
And so it's like sometimes the lighting, and I just, you're right about the phone. We live on these things, we never put them down. My wife's always like, put your phone down, and this and that, and it's like we're always like looking at our phones, and it just speaks to today, and it speaks to all kinds of things. I like paintings that hit you on an emotional level. They strike a chord, and this one with her on her phone, it's like you can relate to that. Everybody can relate to it, and it's just really powerful. Plus the lighting in it is just dynamic. So all right, now this one is one that you've done a while ago that I really like as well. Tell us about this one.
Okay. Oh, wow. Thank you. This one has it's got a lot of context. I guess all paintings for all people, but this was actually done right before I quit my job full time. I was going to be having a small show going on, and again, the universe was talking to me, and someone had asked me to do this little piece. This is a good friend of mine, Jerome's godson, and he was just showing me some pictures. One day I went to college with him. We got reconnected about 3.5, 4 years ago, going through some same things, some changes in life. And this was a picture of his godson. He happened to be somewhere in a kitchen or something. But anyway, it struck me. The voice said I need to paint it. He gave me permission to use this image. And there's so many things going on with it. The first one I will tell you, it felt very personal to me. I love to laugh and like to make jokes. And the hat seemed very funny and very playful. There's the word American on there on part of it, if you look in close, and some other things in the hat that are personal. And that represented kind of the fun part of life. He looks very serious. I have a tendency to look that way when people don't realize I just kind of look that way, and been called on it a few times. And he's sitting. I also did this because it's kind of a little bit of a funny thing for my students, because when I first teach my students, they're not allowed to use black on their palette. And so I did this entirely in black and white. It's kind of just a little bit of a, haha, I'll show you, I can use black. And plus black's my favorite color. It was black and white, just all of it, imagery. The stripes kind of in an imprisonment in your own world, but the fading is a dissolving. Like I had said, I was getting ready, a certain part in life and aging, feel like you're fading away. It felt very personal. I felt very youthful and fun and happy, but I still felt like I was fading away. There's just a lot of things that can be interpreted with this. I've heard many interpretations from other people, what they've taken from it, and I love that. But also, and I told them the story yesterday, but I'll tell you quickly. This was going to be in my a show, and I just had a few pieces because I hadn't painted. I was just starting to paint again, and a person had asked me, well, are you going to have your work for sale? And I said, yeah, but I'm a figurative painter, and at that time I really hadn't connected with figurative painters, so I didn't know how much selling might be involved. And I said, I'm not really sure how much people are going to buy figurative painting. And she said, well, then what's the point? Just very like, why would you paint if no one's going to buy it? And it took me back at first. And then I suddenly realized, and I think most artists feel this way, I'm going to paint every day if I can. I'm going to paint. Whether I sell the piece or not, that's not why I paint. I paint because I love it. And I paint because I want to get my voice, in which I'm still searching for. I paint because I love it. I don't do it to sell. So this very quickly, when I looked at this painting, and because of the somewhat point of his hat, this is called the inception of point, because I feel like this was the beginning. And when she said, what's the point? I wanted people to, this is the inception of that point. I will paint regardless. And this is who I am. And this is kind of that whole idea. So this is very large. It's a diptych. Those pieces are actually separate. I have them now framed as a combined piece because it was going into a gallery and that would be easier to ship that way. But It's actually a diptych. It has 2 pieces, and it's about 30 by 55 altogether.
Oh, wow. That's big.
Yeah,
That's
it's
big.
a large piece.
Yeah. I like how it almost looks like an arrow pointing up, like
Yes.
you're launching. It's like a rocket ship getting ready to
Thank you.
go,
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, lots of different. There's been some political things in the last few years. People have, wow. And I don't know about you, but for me, and I've had to talk to several artists about this over the years. Sometimes the meaning behind my paintings actually change. I'll look at it one way, and then there will be additional things that come along later. So I don't ever look at the painting and say, "Oh, this is what it means," and then 3 years later, I'll say,
right.
you know what, this kind of taking on this now.
Yeah, people are funny when they look at artwork. They tend to do that. Like, for example, when I was doing performance art, and I would go to all, and 90% of the places that I went to were churches, and I would do my performance art, my speed painting, and I would paint this painting, and appear. People would be like, "Whoa," and they'd freak out. But one of the things I did was I would light my paintbrushes on fire, and I would breathe fire while I was painting these things. And what always struck me was after the painting, people would come up to me after the service, and they would be like, "Oh, wow, that was great. What did and they always want to know what the fire did. Like, what was the fire for? When you lit your paintbrush on fire, why did you do that? What was the meaning?" And some people would put, like, they would say, "Oh, does it dry the paint faster?" No, it doesn't dry the paint faster. And then others would be like, "Oh, does it do this?" And then you would have the super spiritual ones that'd be like, "Oh, and does it represent the Holy Spirit, or is it this, or is it?" They would come up with these like so out there like reasons of why, super spiritual, like metaphorical, thing. And I'm like, and I would look at them and I'd be like, "I did it because it's awesome." And it made you go, "Wow." That's the only reason. And they would go, "That's it." And I'm like, "That's it. That's it. That's the reason." And they would be like, but it's funny when people look at art, they can, when you do a painting that has that emotional, like, hook, that connection, you may have a reason what to you the painting represents. But at the same time, people come in and they look at the artwork and it will strike them in a way that you could never anticipate.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about art, is people connect with it on an emotional level when they see it. And there are people that they'll look at painting, "I got to have it because of it reminds me," like they could look at that painting of a little boy and say, "That reminds me of my mother or my father or my grandfather or my uncle or my cousin," things that you would never think about. And it's like, but they connect with it that way. And so when we create art, it's just one of those things. Speaking of which, let's talk about this one. This one is, I'm going to full screen because it's a big one. It's one of your new ones. Tell us about this one. And this one, like I said, talking about how people
waiting.
I'm going to show it in a minute. But this is one where you may have had a meaning, but other people may go, "Oh my gosh, I relate to that because, like maybe my wife or my mother or my sister sat in a chair like that," or something.
You know what? And it's a good point, because sometimes you don't want to necessarily give where you were coming from, to allow that person to, don't let me tell you what you're going to feel about my work.
Yes.
You might have a whole nother
bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
So sometimes it is important to just, I'm going to let you, I'll see which one it is, and then I'll.
All right, here we go. Tell us about this one.
Oh, okay. Wow. This has lots of meaning. First of all, this is my daughter, my other daughter, not the one that was in the cell phone. And, wow. Yeah, there's a lot of emotion going on in this, for many, many reasons. And sometimes this is one that I don't know that I want to possibly tell people how to feel with this, but this was actually in a show at the Wausau Museum of Contemporary Art. And that night I had 3 or 4 women come up to me basically in tears, one especially, and said, either I've been where she is or I am where she is. And it's, it's contemplative. She's obviously thinking very strongly. Even it was so sweet when I took it to my framer, and he's a lovely man here. he said, oh, she is really thinking about someone or something she really loves. And I've had people talk about the contrast, but the very strong dramatic composition is very heavy to the right, which, compositionally that is difficult to do and things, but I wanted this to be off balance. I want the viewer to feel the angst and to feel the uncomfortableness with this. This striped chair is one of my favorite chairs I've had, and it was important. What she's wearing is important. It's my mother-in-law's robe. There's lots of things in it, but it's how she's sort of gazing out the window and thinking about life, whatever we're all thinking about at this time. I've had someone, especially during this pandemic, which we already needed, so you already put it out there, time-wise, is just kind of, man, just an unknown, an uncertainty right now. I think everybody's feeling that. Just whatever you're uncertain about, she has that feeling to me, just that feeling. But yes, it is a big piece. That's about 34 by, maybe it's not 30 by 48 to 50, maybe.
That's a big piece.
I'm bad about remembering that.
Yeah, so that's a big piece. Do you prefer to paint large or small paintings?
Pardon me?
What do you prefer, large or small paintings to paint?
Honestly, I don't have a preference. And I wanted to say that one's called Anxious Contemplation, and you can kind of get where that feeling is. I don't have a preference. There are times where I just feel like I want to hone in on something and I want that feeling of smallness. And there are times that I need to let loose and start out drawing and get a lot of feeling and emotion out at the beginning of it. They all seem to wind up somewhat in similar, whether large or small, in somewhat of a similar place. But the beginning of it, the transition, in a small piece, sometimes your detail comes up quicker because it's smaller and you can get there faster. And larger pieces, it takes you maybe a little longer. So again, kind of almost a mood thing.
Excellent. Now I want to show one more painting of yours before we go into some other subjects. This one we talked about yesterday. This is one of my favorite ones you've done. I love this one to death. And I know that everybody's going to freak out when they see it because it's so cool. Talk to us about this one. There it is.
Okay. This one's called Offering of Strength. And this one is about 30 by 40. I believe maybe a little bit smaller than that. And this, actually, Mary was with me when this happened. Again, Portrait Society only a year later. I was leaving this hotel in DC, and this girl was actually at the front desk with the biggest smile and the kindest eyes, and the voice said, "You need to paint me." And I asked her if I could, and she said yes. And so I did, and I came home and immediately started doing, I did a couple studies of it, but a couple of things that I relate to her. She was in this very, very fancy hotel in DC. She was behind the desk. She is filled with, she had confidence and a smile that just knocked your socks. She was impeccable with her makeup and her hair and everything. You could just feel this pride in herself. And yet, at the same time, I looked at her, I felt very connected to her because she was in this very fancy place. And if you look at her clothing, as well dressed and lovely as she looked, I could tell that things were just not quite fitting. That might have been hand-me-downs, things were, but she looked lovely. But when I was about her age, I worked in a store that was nice. I worked retail, and I probably only had about 2 outfits. I grew up with not a lot of money. I only had about 2 outfits that I could actually wear to work. And you had to be creative, and you can do everything with everything else, but her pride, and I wanted the contrast in the background. I wanted it to feel complete in one way and not complete in the other. I know that she struggles between those two, but as a woman and as a African-American woman, she's carrying, those are ginkgo leaves. And ginkgo leaves are a symbol of strength, a symbol of survival. They're the only tree that has lasted since prehistoric times. It has evolved. And it's called Offering of Strength because she's giving that, as she has, to herself, to others, to anyone who needs it. and every time I will say, it's hard sometimes to say all this about a painting, but she gives me great joy when I look at her. Her face, she has this calmness and this just silent joy and feeling, that kind of like when I look at her, I think everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. When I
Boy,
look at her.
that's so precious what you just said there. When you look at her, you just see everything's going to be fine, and the way that her smile is, the way she's standing there, you're just right. It's like you look at her and go, just you just look at it like me. I'm just like, Lord, just bless that girl, just bless her socks off.
Yeah, I can say that I've grown past not anger. It's a wrong thing. I've grown past when I look at it and go, oh my God, I can't believe I had to do that hair. So that I'm telling you, that hair was, it almost did me in. It was
right.
so meticulous.
Oh yeah, right. There's some challenges when you're painting.
Mm-hmm.
People are hard to paint. They just are.
Yeah.
And it's like if you get one little thing wrong on a person, everybody can tell. And it's like and when you're dealing with certain different fabrics, or you're dealing with hairstyles and different types of hair, it can be a real challenge. But you nailed that painting. It's gorgeous. I absolutely love that one.
I appreciate that.
It is fabulous. You're like a piece of toast. I'm just buttering you up.
Your check's in the mail too.
There you go. So, well, hey, let's talk about something that a lot of people that are trying to make that transition, that are trying to break into the art world. And we see you in a lot of shows. We see you in a lot of different things. And people like, okay, how do I get there? How do I go there? So the first question I have is when you were first starting, I know that you took a lot of workshops and that you traveled to a lot of workshops. So tell us about that aspect of you making the decisions. If I'm going to get better, I need to go to this place or that person or this thing. You went to a conference, for example. Talk to me about what was that tipping point that made you decide I need to start going and seeking out more knowledge?
Well, I was working full time, as you know, and doing some teaching and different things. And I've had, like I said, a number of different jobs, but when the universe was talking to me, it came. I had followed David Costin for quite a few years, and I tried to get into one of his workshops in New York, and I was on a waiting list. And then all of a sudden one became available at his studio in Albuquerque, and I'm in Texas, so it was a little shorter distance. And again, universe, I said, this is what I need to do. I've always loved his work, and so I went. And I had a blast. It was a great, fun week. Both she and Shayna, just absolutely everything I was learning. And he gave me affirmations like, okay, this is what you can do. And they were very open about things. And when I came back and got started, and went to Portrait Society as well, and people were sharing things with me, they were sharing things that you need to kind of do and get into. They shared places. One of the things that has been very important to my career as well was I joined Poets and Artists Society, and they offer a lot of different places to have opportunities to enter shows and different things like that. So so I kind of joined that, and that became and got involved with a lot of different artists that way as well. The second thing was Cafe Express and Juried Art Services. They have a lot of lists of shows that are happening and getting into. It's a scary thing to get into shows, and you do have to look and ask people questions. Is this a good one? Is this not? What level you should start? I will say that you don't start at the top. You have to start in local shows and see how that works and get a feel for some of those. And really ask anyone and everyone around you. I have people ask and call me now, just like I have called and asked other artists. Just a communication is really the biggest thing. I'm very, very, very fortunate in the last 3 years that I've gotten in a lot of shows that I'm thrilled to be in. And I've been in with people that I've admired for years. So in that too, in meeting them, one of the first people I met at a show up in Wausau was Leslie Thiel. And we became instant friends. She said, I feel like I've known you all my life. And I felt the same way. And she's been so helpful. She's an amazing artist and she's very successful. And she lives here now. She's originally from London. She's so generous with anything I need or ask her about. Very, very generous, among many others. I could keep listing a lot of different artists. And I try to do the same thing. If there are others in directions, I have some students that are trying to get into some of these things too. And I do the same thing with them. Here's what I would recommend. Here's what I do. Yeah, it's a lot. So, and a few different friends, artists that have become friends have pushed me, which is nice. You know, you need to enter this. And I'm like, no. And you kind of have to listen sometimes, you know, as one person has said, get out of your own way, and do that. So,
right. And I think you're keying in on a really fundamental aspect to success. And what that is it's relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, I always tell my children, and I've said it 1,000 times on this broadcast, if I've said it once, is that relationships are the highest form of currency. And I've also heard it say, you know, relationships are they're the finances of the kingdom. And so what that means is that relationships will give you things that money can't buy. Right. You know, they'll open doors for you that are normally would be locked to you. And so when you have relationships with these other artists and they say to you, you really need to be in the show, that is sometimes the push we need. It's like, because we'll think, oh, I'm not good enough to be in that show, or I'll never get into that show. But then you have someone that's been in that show that's like, you need to be in that show. You are good enough. I believe in you. Go for it. And all of a sudden you're in that show and you do well in the show. And it's like, it's an experience that you would have never had if it weren't for the relationships that you've built over time, which again then goes into getting involved in organizations, you know, art organizations like the Portrait Society, like the plein air societies out there. There are so many art organizations. It doesn't matter what type of art, what genre of art you do. There's an organization out there for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where those relationships are built at. Mm-hmm. You know, every artist that I've interviewed on this program, I've met either at the Portrait Society or a friend of a friend introducing me. And so that is, I think, a key thing to success is building those relationships with other artists so that they can give you the advice, they can point you in the right direction, they can push you when you need it. You know, the Bible says the iron sharpens iron, so a friend makes a friend better. And so it's like when you're around other artists that have more skill than you, or they're more knowledgeable in the business side of the art world, or they're more connected in the art world. When you become friends with those people and you get around them, they start to rub against you, and all of a sudden you're reaching your goals as well. And so it's really, really great advice that you gave.
And one of the things I want to say, because, you know, I certainly was there too, any organization, whether it's Portrait Society of America, the Plein Air Organization, Poets and Artists that I belong to, or Oil Painters of America, there are certain ones that some you have to, I believe it's Oil Painters of America and the International Guild of Realism. Those you have to submit work and you will or will not be accepted. Right. But there are others like Portrait Society and like I said, Poets and Artists, and I'm going to say, okay, there's a million of them, but, you know, plein air societies and that, there are all levels of artists in there, and people should know that. You don't have to be at a certain level to belong to these, and you'll benefit in so many ways. Our first Portrait Society, when you're in some of these group sessions and people are drawing and painting, and I was convinced that I would just be in the background going, oh my God, what am I even doing here? There are all levels in that room. There are all levels of people drawing in that room. And that's so comforting and reassuring for everyone. You're there you're not in competition with anyone other than yourself. You only want to better yourself. You don't compare yourself to the next person there, because you don't know their story. You don't know how long they've been doing this. Just go there with the intention of, this is just for me. And I was really very pleasantly pleased. Like you said, there's the top of the heap with Portrait Society. There's top of the greatest artists, and I love, seeing and meeting and learning from them, as well as lots of people who are in the same process of learning and growing with everything. Same thing. We learn from all of them. Everybody is kind of on, I don't want to say on the same playing field there, but you really don't know who's who at that. Everybody's just there, and you're walking around watching people. So it's a great society to belong to, but so are these others. Learn from everybody and just get involved with them. You'll find people.
Right. Now, how has your experience going to workshops with other artists, how did that help you get to the next level, do you think?
Well, when I started with Hull Academy, we talked about bringing people in, because I think that was really important. And I'm sorry that light, whatever we had earlier, just went bold again. Anyway, when we decided to bring people in for our students and everything else to do, but we grow from them. And I think the biggest thing and that's part of my teaching. I want to do workshops too. And I want to work on, how do you put together a workshop? And so in 3 years, I've learned a lot with that. Navigating, bringing it to my table, what the artists will teach, I pay forward. So it just becomes this constant kind of web and flow with what's happening. And I'm real excited, because before the pandemic, I had a couple of things worked out with workshops, and everything has kind of come. But a lot of these artists, as you said, man, talk about just readjusting their sails and moving on. They're doing Zoom workshops. We'll all be back in person again. I know we will. I am teaching at a social distance with only a few students and everyone masked. That I know will change again. But I have a workshop that I'm scheduled to do in Italy in 2022, and I'm just praying that 2022 will be fine.
Yeah.
When they first scheduled me for 2022, it was about 6 or 8 months ago, and I thought, 2022, it seems like an eternity away. Am I going to be alive? I don't know. But now it feels like, I think we're set. 2022 might be good.
22, yeah, a couple years from now is probably how long it's going to take to get back to normal, it seems like.
Or whatever normal will be. I don't know if I'll ever be normal, but it's all right.
Oh my goodness, that is funny. That is funny. It's when you become an artist and you're learning and you're training and you're trying to grow, it's like, we never stop growing. But having those friends that can point you in the right direction and lead you and hone your skills and sharpen your skills are huge, and I know that you've been very active with that. You've been recently with Jennifer Balkin and her Atelier dojo. You've been doing her virtual painting times and things like that from a live model in her studio via Zoom and different things like that. And there are ways. Nothing will stop you if you are going for it. If you've got that attitude, I've got, and again, to me, it's a plan. Whether you've written it down or it's in here or in here, you've got a goal, and your goal is to get to be an artist, or it doesn't matter what your goal is, whether you want to be an artist or something else. It's about drive sometimes, and hard work. We used this quote yesterday: hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. When you have drive, it will take you forward no matter what the circumstances are, whether it's a pandemic or a zombie apocalypse. It won't matter. You're going to get where you need to go because you've got that drive, and having that drive really, really makes a difference in seeing your goals met. It's Michelangelo said, if people knew how hard I worked to retrieve my mastery, they wouldn't think it's so wonderful at all.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. And we all joke about, there's all those things we've all been told. How long did that take you? Well, you've just got the magic brush, or, well, you're just talented. Well, I teach my students, when I was teaching younger at a private location. I was teaching teens, young students and teens, whatever. There were three things that you have to have. You have to have talent. You have no control over that talent. You have no control over how much, or if there is even a level. I don't know. But talent seems to be more like a desire or a real love for something. But anyway, a talent. You have to have talent. The second thing is you have to be teachable. I am whatever years old, and I am still very teachable. I just try to absorb whatever artists are telling me, and students come in with ideas that they have learned from other people. I like sharing that. I want to hear a group thing. I don't believe that there are no rights and wrongs in art, but I do like to hear there are different ways to approach things. The third thing, most important, is tenacious. So 3 T's: talent, teachable, and tenacious. You have to be tenacious. I mean, I couldn't just quit my job and then come sit in the studio and go, well, I kind of, I like art, and, I'm hoping something happens. I know that for the first, I'm not exaggerating, for the first week after I quit my job, I was so excited to be home and in a studio, and I got it all set up and cleaned up, that I did not come out of this room, I think, for less than 12 to 14 hours a day. I wanted to be here, and I want to see where I was going. You're excited and all that. So it was tenacious. You have to work at it. You have to. And I've had a couple students that during this have done, just privately in our little groups, they've done drawing sessions amongst themselves and drawing every day, doing this, challenges. And I've watched them grow. And like one said to me, they go, oh, I can see this. And I said, yeah, it's not magic. It's hard work. It's not magic. It's hard.
That's just it. It's like I've told people before, it's like people don't seem to understand when you tell an artist, oh, you've got some natural talent. And it's like, that's it for an artist, that's actually an insulting statement.
Absolutely.
It's like, you don't realize how hard I've worked over the years to develop these skills. That's why I don't call it talent. I call it skill. I call it skill because
I like that.
That's what it is. You have to work hard to get here.
Yes. I that's a great term. I'm going to use it from now. It's a skill. It's taking the time to work at something and work towards it. And that's why I said, going back to my professor in college, he really demanded you have a skill, or that's what he wanted to do, is to gain that. He wanted you to have a marketable skill. So when I got out of college and I had moved I'm originally from Michigan, I'd moved for job reasons to Oklahoma. And one of the first jobs I had was as a courtroom artist. Well, if I didn't have some ability to be able to draw the figure,
you wouldn't have gotten that job. Yeah,
I wouldn't have. And when I went to the station, it was I think an ABC or an NBC affiliate. I can't remember now which one, because I worked for both on and off. But I went in my portfolio. I was out of college maybe 6 months to a year. I didn't really have a marketable way to how to build a portfolio, but I had all these drawings, and of course they were nudes. I was a figure drawer. That was my, main thing. And I remember the gentleman looked at me and he said, well, if you can put clothes on them, you've got a job. And it dawned on me, oh yeah, I guess, courtroom, I guess I'll do that. So again, I would not have had that. I would not have had that without that. I wouldn't have been able to be a fashion illustrator. I wouldn't have been able to do there are things that, if you can do this, you can do this. And so I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. One of the classes I took at the Academy of Art University, and I was talking to Craig Nelson 2 weeks ago on the show. And he's one of the main people over there. He's like in charge of the entire, the painting, all the fine art department. Basically, he's over. And we were talking about probably one of the greatest classes that they offer that a lot of art programs in colleges don't offer is one called Professional Practices.
Oh,
where it's a full semester of this is how to make a living as an artist.
That's a great thing.
And it was one of the best classes I took. It prepares you. So when you leave that class, you are ready to have your first solo exhibit. And everything is laid out, ready to go. Your business cards, your bio, your website, everything is there. Plus all of your artwork from your master's thesis. You're ready to have your first solo exhibit. My first solo exhibit was actually my master's thesis. But that
Wow.
one class prepared it all
Yeah.
for you to just, all you needed to do was find a location
Yeah.
that would be willing to do it, whether you paid for it or you had someone host it. So it's like a lot of colleges don't do that, which is a
Yeah.
shame. A lot of art programs don't have a professional practice class, which to me is a tragedy, because a lot of artists don't know what to do when they get out of art college. It's, yeah, they can paint, they've got the
Right.
skills, or they can draw, or they can sculpt or whatever, but they don't have the business savvy or the confidence to go, okay, how do I get in a gallery? How do I do this? How do I do this? But what you've done by having the relationships, by going to the workshops, by getting involved with key organizations, they fill those gaps, and they give you those opportunities to do that. So it's a really, really smart business tactic that you're using.
Right. Well, thank you. The one thing, in the college I went to, it's a small Catholic college in Michigan. That was one of the things. So to graduate with a BFA, with Bachelor of Fine Art, you had to have a one-person show at the end of.
Oh, wow.
So you had to be able to, you had to learn how to frame and do all the other things to put them on. Or if you could afford to have them all framed, and put together your. And I still have hanging up here somewhere my first invitation to my one-person show, which I laugh all the time about. You had to, hand set all the stuff. It's just funny now when I think of all the things that can be done so easily. But yeah, that was an important thing. And one skill that I thought he taught as well, and I'm probably my mother taught as well too, is if you want to get from A to F, you have to go through these steps, and you have to know how to get there. And a friend of mine gave me the biggest compliment ever. She said, that's one thing I've always known you to do, is if you wanted to get somewhere, you always knew how to get there. Like what you needed to do this, to get to this, to do this, to do this. And I did it without realizing it. I guess I just do that. And I owe it to a lot of people who have just kind of taught me that. You can't jump through these hoops. Just like there's no easy way to become a great painter. You have to paint. You have to work at it.
You've got to work at it. Yeah, exactly.
And you have to start from the beginning. We teach that at Hull. You can't paint a portrait until you can do a sphere. I mean,
right. And that's something that my friend Matt Tommy talks about, is that you can't just have this one side. If you want to be a professional artist, you've got to have a skill level that looks professional. It's got to be of a professional level. If you're really going to make a living as an artist, you have to have the skills to make people want your art. If it looks amateurish, or if it looks like a child did it, no one's going to want to buy that. And so the skills are important. And you've been working hard, and you've been training, and you've been going to the top workshops from the top artists and things like that. And now you're teaching. And so it's really, you've said before that teaching makes you a better artist. And having the ability to instruct. Not everybody, there's a lot of artists out there that are tremendous artists, but they're not good instructors. And that's a skill in and of itself. Being able to explain or articulate your skills in a way that the student can implement. Is huge. And so that's a big key factor.
And in the same sense, what I was talking, going from A to B to C to D to whatever, you can't really jump around too much. It's like I've experienced this with a teacher in the past, where we're going to do this little watercolor, and we're going to do all this and do all this, and then 3 weeks later, now we're going to do watercolor techniques. What's wrong with that picture?
Right.
You need to have a progression. You need to do this before this, before this, before this, and hopefully they will, grow on top of each other. And that's why when we bring in, and I can honestly say all the workshops that we've brought into Hull, I can't even begin to tell you there's not one that I can say we've ever been disappointed in. They've risen to the occasion, and their skill, and like we were talking about with Dojo, we've had both Jennifer Balkan and Karen Uffut at Hull, and their how they approach things are so entirely different, and yet the base ideas are so important.
Right.
And they're just great. And I remember with Jennifer, I was like, you push me. And that's why I bring them there. I want to learn from all of these people. So I'm fortunate when I say I don't have to travel around to go to workshops.
Because you're bringing them to you. Yeah, that's one of the things.
them
Well, where do you see yourself in a couple of years? I know you had mentioned that you're going to be doing a workshop overseas, which is exciting. What excites you about the future? What do you have any projects that you're working on that you're like, okay, this is my next couple paintings, or do you have a particular subject matter that you're passionate about that you're going to try to maybe work on? Tell us a little bit about what you see in the next couple of years from you.
Yeah, I would like to do, I would like to teach more workshops because I do like to travel, and hopefully in the future that would be possible.
Yeah, and they pay for it too.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope, I don't have any, I'm really sorry that light, it's like this glow has come up here. But anyway, I don't want to, I really don't ever see not teaching. Because I love that connection with people. I will say,
yeah, once you get the teaching bug, it doesn't go away.
Yeah, between the people, the artists that I have met, and between the students that I've had, the connections you make with these people, the connections that you have on a daily basis, that's been probably as much fun and as much whatever success I've had. That's been as important to me as the other. Honestly, I love people, and to be able to call a lot of these people now friends is really important to me. It's not just acquaintances and people. And then, so to answer your question, I do have a couple ideas for some more paintings. Some will include the striped chair as well. I have a third going, and I hope a series. I would like to have gallery representation a little more so than I am on Artsy through 33 Contemporary, which is also part of Poets and Artists. I would like to become more involved with that, having more time to, get painting out there. But in all honesty, I get real busy, and I've said this, a few of my friends have heard it more times than not. I need to stop for a minute, and I need to paint more. You do have to learn that balance.
Yes.
Doing a lot of this and a lot of work.
Yeah, you can never sacrifice studio time.
No. And so, and that's what I think is happening. And just in this pandemic that we haven't been talking about, but we spoke yesterday, and we said why we don't talk about things that are happening now is because you don't want to date these things.
Right.
And so now we just dated it.
Yeah, we did. It's all right.
It's okay. So, but in this, I have seen so many artists that have just thrived in it and said, this has really motivated me to paint, and it's all over Facebook and all over social media. In the reverse of that, it was the opposite for me. And I was really pleased when I saw some other artists share that said, I'm sorry, but this shut me down. Mentally, I wasn't feeling like painting. I was having a difficult time. There's nothing wrong with that either. How you respond to anything is not a good or a bad thing. It's how you respond to it. Now, a lot of us have had to adjust our wings and, change the direction. And so however you do it, it's important to communicate. It's important to share that with everybody so that we don't feel alone. That's, to me, the biggest thing. So and I think that's probably going to be this next thing in my paintings won't be necessarily about the pandemic, but necessarily about how we connect and how it feels not to be alone. It makes me, there's a couple of things, we talked yesterday about self-portraits. And I don't do them, but I did one, and I did it kind of because, I do like to laugh, and I did it from the back. And I did it intentionally because people are like, oh, everybody should do a self-portrait. Okay, I will. Well, I don't want to do one. I don't like being on camera. I don't like any of this. Anybody who knows me. So I did it from the back, and I had it sitting at the studio for a while, not this my studio, but where I teach. And everybody came in and went, oh my God, that's you. Well, if you can tell, because that's how I teach too, and silhouette is really important. All these things are important, but it's a feeling in that I wanted to express. It's about what's now. And when people connect to it and do, that's important too. And I did start another one, and it's kind of funny what direction that one's going to. So you never know.
That's funny that you mentioned self-portrait. To me, it's, you know, people that are not artists, they don't understand what a self-portrait is, you know, and it's like they think artists are arrogant because we're always painting ourselves. And it's like, no, it's number one, it's a free model that I don't have to pay. That's the first one. Yeah. So I always have, as long as I have a mirror, I've got a model. That's probably the biggest one. And the other one is it's really interesting because to me, it's like, that's a picture of how the artist sees themselves, you know? And so like, I've got a couple self-portraits, and there's one where I'm just leaning in. It's just my head, you know, and my kids hate it. They hate it. They're like, it looks like you, Dad, but it looks like you've got your angry eyes on, and it doesn't feel like you because you're angry. It makes me look like I'm mad or something. And they're like, you're never mad. You're always funny, funny, funny. And then I have another one where I'm going like this, and I've got a little devil Timmy and a little angel Timmy over here, you know, and it's really mischievous. Like they're like, that's you, Dad. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And I really admire when I was trying to do, I mean, I'm looking through it, and and I'll get over and try to do some of those, but Laura Tan is an amazing artist. She paints a lot of self-portraits of herself, and they are incredible, very different and but when you look at it, I don't think of it as, oh, it's her or anything like that. And, and we know, Shana uses herself as a model a lot.
Yeah, Shana does. Jennifer does a lot of self-portraits as well. There's a lot of artists out there that do it, and so it's like, it's just one of those things. I don't do them that often either. When I have, it's usually just practice. And for me, if no one's to see, I don't usually share them. But it's like, I mean, in my situation, my biggest model is the wife, because she watches Grey's Anatomy and I draw her. That's because all the kids have moved out.
You should get money for every time you plug Grey's Anatomy.
That would be great. If Grey's Anatomy wants to advertise on the Modern Masters podcast, that would be pretty good. That was pretty good. It's kind of funny. We've got a young man in our lives. We've known him since he was a baby. Literally, that's how old I am. He's a full-grown man now, and he recently had one of his songs he's a musician. He had one of his songs at the end of Grey's Anatomy. Like when they played the music at the end of every episode, it was his music. So we were pretty proud of him. So but.
See,
awesome.
He owes that to you too.
Yeah. So, well, hey, this has been a really fun interview. We are doing this again. We are going to do this again. I'm going to have you back on because we had just too much fun. But I just want to say thank you to you for coming on. And again, guys, check out her website here, barbarahack.com. You can also find her on Instagram and Facebook, and you will just absolutely love her art and seeing all the things that she does. But with that said, guys, I'm gonna close out this show right now. And so, Barbara, we will talk with you in just a few minutes.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you, everybody.
All right, guys. Wow, what a great man. That was just good. That was just good. I enjoyed that so much. I'm going to put our little banner at the bottom of the screen again, guys. If you have been enjoying the Modern Masters podcast as much as I have, hit the like button on the Gagnon Atelier Facebook page and share this video if you want. I would really appreciate that too. Also, if you haven't already, go on over to our YouTube channel, the Gagnon Atelier YouTube channel. When you're there, if you're looking on YouTube, what you will see is this logo right here. You will see that little color wheel on the screen, and that's how you'll know it's us. But I would really appreciate you if you could subscribe to us on YouTube and also hit the notification buttons. That will help us. We have every interview we've ever done on there. We also have a ton of other videos and a lot more really cool content coming up for that. So with that said, guys, I am just so glad that you could join us today. And as always, just remember, God loves you, and so does your old pal, Tim. We'll talk to you soon.